All right, good evening, everyone. It's 7:01. I'd like to call together the November 21st, 2024 school committee meeting. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This evening we have our consent agenda posted, as well as the minutes from the November 14th, 2024 meeting, as well as our oath of bills and payroll. So, motion to accept.
And will we accept the consent agenda?
Motion made by Elaine,
I second.
seconded by Janine. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous. So, our first opportunity for interested citizens. If there's anyone with us this evening that would like to speak before the school committee, it's your first chance, second chance at the end of the meeting.
You don't have any?
Hearing from no one, we'll move on to our recognition portion of the evening. Harish Ganesh is here this evening with us. Thank you very much for joining us. Take it away.
Good evening, everybody. A couple updates from all of the schools. I'll start with Shaker Lane. Shaker Lane students have been working with a new program called the Reflex Math Fact Fluency Program. It's limited to 3 classrooms at the moment, but in those 3 classrooms, since this program was implemented, students have gained 685 math facts, which is excellent progress. And Shaker Lane wishes all families a wonderful Thanksgiving break. Russell Street wanted to thank everybody who donated to their Thanksgiving food drive, all of which will proceed to Loaves and Fishes on Friday. Students look forward to their annual turkey trot tradition and celebrations during the Wednesday half day, and they'll get the opportunity to walk around the track afterwards. And Russell Street also wishes all families a very happy Thanksgiving. The middle school likewise will have their annual Turkey Olympics on Wednesday, fun activities for the students. They also wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. For the high school, between November 22nd and 24th, tomorrow and this weekend, the drama club is performing The Man Who Came to Dinner, if anyone's interested in going. November 26th, they'll be playing the Powder Puff game. On December 3rd, the school guidance department will be hosting a financial aid night for seniors and their families, or juniors too. On December 4th, there will be a high school winter concert at 7 p.m. And the guidance office wanted the committee to note that about 3 of every 4 seniors has applied to at least 1 college so far. So we're making excellent progress. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank
Can I just try one clarification, Harish? I'm so sorry. When you said 3, I went, what? I must have been partly sleeping when I wrote that. It's all 6 classrooms.
Six.
perfect.
So that's my fault. I said, oh, what did I write?
Are you tired,
Michelle? All 6.
Even better.
So my apologies.
That's all right. Thank you.
Because we keep you out at night too much.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of short ones. I just wanted to piggyback on the LHS drama play this weekend. There are 4 different opportunities to see this play. So if you're looking for something to do this weekend, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. We have so many talented students and directors and staff that take part in making these productions, and it's definitely worth scheduling some time to go see it. So Friday nights at 7 o'clock, and Saturday we have 2 showings, so at 1 p.m., one at 1 p.m. and one at 7 p.m. And we have a matinee Sunday at 1 p.m. So hope to see a lot of people out. So the start of the festive season. There's going to be a number of concerts coming up in December as well. It's great time of the year. As some of you know, I'd like to say, as all of you know, we launched School Status. The app is called School Now. It's a universal communication tool that's going to put everything in our district under one umbrella. Yeah, it's going to be so nice to be able to do that. You've heard us talk about the days of using X are soon over. And I mean, some of us are still going to use it, but it's going to be a secondary source. We're going to switch everything to School Status. And Dorothy, if you could put School Status up now for a couple of minutes, we can give them kind of a preview. We've been playing with it this week ourselves at Central Office. Set a number of things up. And for any families out there that may be having difficulty downloading the app, just send Dorothy or I an email or a tech department email, and we'll help you out. It should be hopefully pretty easy to download.
Here's the homepage on the right side. If you click over here, the district, I'll number up on the right here. Click on district news. And you can get all of the news.
Can you go to the actual app or no?
Oh,
Okay.
I saw it on the previous screen.
on the home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
let's try that.
right, is that it? Right above the man who came to dinner?
Yes, you did. I'm sorry. Right here.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we. So you can access it on the website as well. And we really have three kind of formats. We have messages. That's how we're going to send out communication to families or letters, etc. We'll format that way. And it'll be good for us to continue to focus on brevity when we're writing. Because we have a few moments to capture people. We want to make sure that our information we send home is not too long. Then we have posts, which you already saw up there. That's going to be very similar to the old Twitter.
Mm.
So our webpage is going to come alive with pictures once again. So we're really excited about that. And then we have Blackboard Connect that we use for snow days, etc. And we're putting all of that into this communication tool as well. So it's nice to have everything in one place, and it should be very easy shopping for our families and staff. And so our newsletters are also going to be coming out using this app. And I believe, Michelle, did you send yours out using the app on Friday or no?
No, it starts tomorrow.
Starts tomorrow? Okay. So tomorrow will be the first day where all the newsletters are going to be on that app. So Elaine, as soon as you have the information, you don't have to wait for us to send emails anymore to
I
the
love that.
newsletters.
So I remember in the before times when Twitter was Twitter,
Mhm.
I used to love the way that you would retweet things that teachers had tweeted, and then it would get up on the homepage of the website.
Mhm.
And so it was a very dynamic homepage of the website, because you go there and see things that were happening,
Mhm.
right away. And it just really gave a sense of all of the dynamic things happening in the district. So is that your vision with this, that it will become alive?
Yes,
like
it
that?
is. We're still working out a few kinks. It's not that bad. It's not as quick as it was before. But one thing about Twitter is the way it was designed. If I just reposted, it would automatically feed to the website. There's two extra steps now, and I think as soon as we get better at using it, maybe we can find one step where it'll do everything for us. But that's our intent.
Yeah.
Because that was really, a great way to showcase what was happening in our district. And people really have missed that, opportunity to go on and flip through some posts and pictures. So that's what we want to get back to.
It's great.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
So I'll be the guinea pig for this.
Sure.
So how are folks supposed to sign up for this? Because I'm not in the system of yours. So are people responsible for signing up and giving you their email address, and then we'll push the information to them? Or are you using all available email addresses that you already have and you've entered them in?
We're using the emails that we already have in Aspen.
Okay, so your email, so it's just, so everyone's aware, it's just emails that are in Aspen. So it's a house.
All primary parents, all primary families.
Okay,
The primary contact, so if
Contacts,
you have parents one, for example, if you're a grandparent household, only one is the primary
Primary.
contact. That person received the information,
Okay.
the other did.
so how does the second email recipient of the household then get added to the system?
The primary will add them
Okay,
when they're going to sign up.
Thought that, let me look. I thought that they would scan QR code.
So did I.
Or they can sign up.
yeah, so I think when you attempt to sign up, if your cell phone number, if your email is not already in the system,
you've hit a dead end.
It won't take it.
Yeah.
So then it would be reaching out to our tech department
Okay.
and they will be able to have people in.
All right.
And she might come up, let me connect with Julie and see
Sure.
if there's a more streamlined, as opposed to her getting inundated with lots of emails, and then we can send that message out tomorrow on Friday.
Yeah,
Sure.
maybe something to brainstorm, because if the district already has a lot of alternative email addresses for households, maybe we can just load those in. Versus her, IT receiving whatever, 500 emails with the same problem.
Yeah.
Okay. On that. All right, we will move into our presentation portion of the evening. So we've got 3 exciting presentations for this evening. The first of which is Elaine and I had the opportunity to attend the MASC 2024 Fall Conference, which is the Massachusetts School Committee Conference for school committee members and superintendents. I was down there for roughly about 24 hours or so, and it was a well worth it experience. Elaine was down there for 48.
Yeah.
Yeah, two
Two and a half days.
2.5 days.
Yeah,
And we wanted to just share our experience with you. Elaine's prepared some slides, so I'm gonna let you kind of run this
Yeah.
portion, run this presentation, and then I can, contribute,
We can jump in.
I can contribute, or depending upon how we do with time, we can revisit my experience at a later date, but.
Are you ready?
yeah, I'm ready. I have it up here too, so. Yeah, so this is a annual conference of school committee members and superintendents. And it's really a fascinating opportunity to connect with other districts that are dealing with similar challenges so that we're not all trying to solve the same problems in isolation. And so most of the presentations are presented by a superintendent with members of their school committee, maybe members of their leadership team. So I went to sessions that I thought were most relevant to things that we're working on in our district. Justin did as well. But it's a wonderful vibe of people that are grappling with challenges and willing to share where they are on their journey. I don't think anybody comes at it like, we have solved this problem. And, it's a very much a spirit of collaboration. What I want to show you tonight is just, I prepared a slide with just highlights of the sessions I went to, and I've got so much more information, but I wanted to see if any of these kind of tweaked the interest of anyone here. And if they don't, we can move on. So the first one I went to was about the Student Opportunity Act, the SOA, because we've been talking about that a bit in our school committee meetings. And I thought it was going to be how districts are,
Sorry.
yeah, I'm on Student Opportunity Act, it's working, but
I don't know where this started on.
wait, just went past it. Yeah.
Oh, so you're starting on a different slide?
Oh, I'm on the packet. It should be in the same order, right?
Were you sharing?
No,
No, we're just.
Will you go back?
Are you showing the packet?
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
no, not the packet, no.
you showing the actual slide
I
deck?
don't know what happened.
Oh, I moved the slides around on the slide deck, I thought it.
Oh, we already
Because
know.
when I presented this to somebody else, I changed the order.
That makes
So
sense.
why don't you just?
I will go in the order that it is in the slide deck.
Okay.
Okay,
all right.
so I'll get back to the
Sorry.
Student Opportunity Act. This one, it was about equity audits and inquiry cycles. This was interesting because it was targeted toward small districts, which we are, and talking about when you do an equity audit and you're sending out a survey and you're gathering all of this data, you can create sampling errors due to small subgroups. And then if you're reporting data on something that happened to a subgroup, the percentages get really off because you're really only talking about a small number of students, but they're a high percentage of a subgroup. So they were recommending, instead of doing equity audits, to do what they called an equity inquiry cycle, which is more of a holistic way of gathering information that you would start with students that you already have a relationship with. I was thinking about maybe the DEI club at the high school and really ask guiding curiosities rather than set questions, just to try to elevate things that they're worried about, things they're concerned about, start to brainstorm with them, possible ways to mitigate it. So it seemed like a really effective approach for a district our size. So if that is something that we want to pursue, I linked in onto that slide. It's actually from the collaborative in Northampton, CES, I forget what they stand for.
You can see us.
CES. But anyway, they have a starter kit for equity inquiry cycles. So if we did want to pursue that, they have materials right on their website for free that we could look at. So that's one.
Would you mind forwarding that link to me?
Yeah, so it's actually in the
It
packet.
is in the packet?
Yeah, so on that slide,
Sorry, I haven't brought.
yeah, you
my
see
computer
how
today.
there's the equity audits and inquiry cycles is underlined. That means it's a live link.
Oh,
Yeah, so when you,
Okay.
I can forward it to
No,
you.
I have it on my computer. I
Yeah.
was
They're a really good group. I've worked with them
told
before.
myself I'm not gonna be reliant on my computer.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I'm glad you're interested in that. I can send that to you. Then the next one was the Dignity Index. This was a keynote speaker. Justin was with me for this one. It was this mystery man that we were trying to figure out who he was. Turned out to be a famous guy, who presented this. But so the Dignity Index has to do with the tone of our political discourse. And it was a way to rank discourse with contempt being at one end and dignity being on the other. They provided us with a scoring guide to examine different quotes and videos and rank it on the level of contempt or dignity. And of course, this was the day after the election, so we were all thinking about this, and they showed us quotes without saying who it was that had said it, and so it came down, in not as much of a partisan way as we might have thought. But the value of it, I thought, was that going through that exercise really helped hold a mirror up to our own speech and how we can interact with others that we may not agree with in a way that doesn't dehumanize them or other groups. So I have a lot more information on that if anybody's interested in that. It's also linked into that slide. If you click on the title, it'll bring you to the website of the people that created the Dignity Index. Do you have anything to add to that one? Since you were there.
No, I mean, Tim Shriver was a dynamic speaker. It
Yeah.
was a great presentation, I think. The timing of it was wonderful. It was his actual talk was titled something about, the new patriot or new patriotism or something like
Yeah.
that. So some of the room was on edge, and I think everybody left that presentation feeling like, the world's full of people that don't necessarily agree with how you feel, but we can at least treat one another with respect. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you lessen what your cause is by any stretch of imagination. There was a question from the audience. And it was a difficult question, right? And he said, no, I'm not asking you to play nice or anything like that. I'm just asking, we need to treat one another with respect. I mean, another thing I thought was fascinating about that was like the aspect of war came up and major conflict. And Shriver shared that when he was at West Point and he had an opportunity to interact with some of those folks, he said, at times it unfortunately does absolutely become necessary for a strategy like that. But the strategy has to be get in and get out, execute what you need to do and have a peaceful resolution in mind on the other end of that, because a long drawn out war, could end up with genocide or something like that. So it wasn't play nice, but it was have a plan and treat others with respect.
Right, and I went to that breakout session after that, we were looking at examples like the example that scored a 1 for contempt was the insurrection at the Capitol. And the example that scored an 8 on dignity was from Ted Lasso. So it kind of gave us a framework for understanding this, but it's a great exercise to go through if that's of interest to anybody. Then the next one was building a shared culture of belonging. I went to this one because belonging is something that we've been focusing on with the DEIB group and across the district. So these were panelists. It was the superintendent, a school committee member, assistants. Like they had a pretty big team from Lennox sharing how they moved beyond addressing acts, isolated acts of intolerance toward building a culture of belonging. They talked about some specific incidents at their high school and how they decided to pivot away from away from just consequences for the perpetrator to treating the incidents as teachable moments and provide context about why, say, swastika on a locker, like why that is offensive, what that triggers from history that, offends people so much, and that they found their feedback from their students was that the victims of the acts of intolerance felt safer with that approach than when the perpetrator was just punished. So they admitted that they are still on their journey. I took like a full page of notes because so much of what they were saying resonated with our district and just where we are in our journey toward belonging. So if anybody's interested in those resources, I can talk more about that at another time. Okay, now back to the Student Opportunity Act. So when I went to this one, I thought it was going to be how districts are managing the money that they get from the Student Opportunity Act, but instead it was about where the money comes from, how they decide who gets what, and what I learned actually clarified some confusion for me when we've talked about this before in school committee meetings. I thought the SOA was a separate thing from Chapter 70. They said that the Student Opportunity Act is actually a reform of Chapter 70, so it is Chapter 70. And that the reporting requirement that goes with that, like I had questions about that because it seems so disconnected from, you have to write a report for how you're going to spend the money before you know how much you're getting. And they said that reporting requirement was a compromise with the legislature when passing this act, and that everybody kind of agrees that it's a reporting requirement with no objective.
Right.
Like it's really
So
not
messy.
linked. So I feel sorry for the people who have to write that, but it's the game that everyone has to play. My big takeaway from this was that there is more money that is in the fund for the SOA that the money has been collected but has not been budgeted to be spent. And this is a thing that we were asked to contact our state legislators about. So the money the money comes from the fair share tax, the millionaire's tax for schools. So in FY24, they collected 2.2 billion that was supposed to be allocated for education, and only 1 billion was budgeted to be spent, which means that there's another 1.2 billion sitting there that should be allocated and going to schools. And if that money was put into the pipeline, it could go into K-12 building fund expansion, which is another thing that we're all thinking about right now. And another thing that they wanted us to talk with our state legislators about is that in the SOA, there is a 4.7% inflation cap, which when our inflation rate went above that, it was not adjusted. And so the legislature needs to meet and vote to fix that so that districts get that money that they should have gotten when our inflation rate was above 4.7. So I have their slide deck is linked into this slide if anybody's interested in lots of graphs and charts and numbers.
If any of you have an opportunity to actually talk to the people that have the ability to refine how they distribute this money, it would be great. My recommendation would be, we all know it's part of Chapter 70, but let's designate it as something. Usually funding formulas in many states, here's your technology portion of your Chapter 70 fund. Here's your special education. Here's your Student Opportunity Act. Because and I know it was an agreement that was made to make sure something went through, but as we know, there's such a discrepancy in terms of who owns the money.
Yeah.
And that would make it, much clearer and much easier for school districts to work with municipalities because there would be some guidance.
Right. I mean, there's a lot more in the slide deck, but they did make it sound like it was a compromise
It was-
legislation, and then, you get a lot of people's wish list jammed into one bill, and it's not clean and clear.
I mean, the positive thing is they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. And this presentation was from the field director of MASC, who's very knowledgeable on this, plus a lobbyist who had like kind of the other side of the coin. So it was very interesting. Then I went to strategic planning in a post-pandemic world, which is a real weird title for what it really was, which was portrait of graduate. So that's why I went, because we're busy with a portrait of graduate initiative here in Littleton. It was fascinating. It was Dighton Rehoboth. And they have brought their portrait of graduate program across the grade spans, K to 12. They took their vision that they developed at the high school and then created a vertical alignment document so that they could articulate what their goals looked like at K to 2, what it looked like at 3 to 5, what it looked like 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. They created a walkthrough tool using the tenets of their portrait of graduate, and this was all linked to their strategic plan. So the process they went through brought them to this outcome that I thought looked very similar to what you had been talking about several weeks ago. They even tied their superintendent evaluation to the portrait of a graduate and their strategic plan. So they really did soup to nuts. They did tons of marketing around it, lots of branding and pumping everybody up about it. So it was very comprehensive. And I have a lot more about it if anybody's interested in that one.
We'd love to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have Detmock's model, and it's very thorough work as well, but it'd be nice to see another model. And
Yep.
See how
It was fantastic. They were very friendly. Like I went up to them afterwards and I said, "Oh, we're talking about something similar to Littleton," and they were all, "Oh, please reach out. We love to share." That was the best thing about these sessions, where everybody was so open and willing to share what they had done on their journey, and it's a wonderful collaboration. The last one is, I think, less of a perfect fit, but this was all about green and blue sustainability. It was Falmouth, so of course they have the ocean, which is the blue part. But they were talking about outdoor classroom and school gardens and STEM fairs, and they're right down there with Woods Hole and the MBL. But it was just talking about how their initiative and the grants that they were able to get. So I don't know if there's a coordinated effort in the district with school gardens and outdoor classrooms, and we haven't talked much about that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but that's just another way to engage students. So anyway, any of that stuff I can provide more. So Kelly, you wanted to learn more about the POG and the slide deck for the SOA.
Portrait of a graduate.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
I just want to thank both of you for taking the time to take part in the conference. I know you're both very busy, and the fact that you're able to shuffle your schedule to go down there and meet with colleagues and other superintendents, and it's for me very powerful. And I'm so glad that both of you had a good experience.
Mhm.
makes me feel real good because I've always been a firm believer in that conference. I think it's a great way for superintendents and school committee members to be together for a couple of days and focus, as a huge team in representing the state. So,
Yeah.
right.
Just been found out I'm a conference geek.
Right. Yeah, Janine, you gotta try to get there next year if you can.
Yeah.
I will.
And I've encouraged Stacy and Beal to try to get there as well. I'll take 2 minutes and just kind of go through what I saw. And your comments resonated with me just now because I was thinking, obviously you had a situation where you planned on attending this year, but you couldn't. But I was thinking, it would have been so great to have Kelly, at this session because we could have bounced ideas off one another afterwards, or you could have confirmed for me that some of these things were taking place. And I think that was definitely one of the great takeaways was some of the stuff that we heard at the conference. I know we're doing because there's evidence of that all year long. But the sessions that I attended, I'll just go through them quickly. I'll circle back on this one because I thought this one was one of the better ones, was data-driven decisions, because we hear about that all the time, but I want to talk a little bit about that. A DEIB with an emphasis on the B, because I think everyone thrives better in an environment where they have a sense of belonging. So that was the crux of that. A budget one, which was what should be in your budget document. And my joke with Steve Mark after that was, if I asked Steve to create a budget document similar to Wellesley, Springfield, and Worcester, which win this national merit, Steve would probably give me a resignation right away. These budget documents are like 460 pages, searchable fields. Like if anybody from the town can call to say, I have a question, they would refer you right back to this document. It was unbelievable. A session on a presentation by a firm that was the architect, I believe, on like 3 new builds and the journey that those districts had gone through, which I thought was relevant, of course. And then a session on how to build relationships with other municipal figures, be it employees or other board members and things like that. So that was of interest as well. But my takeaways on the data-driven decisions, and maybe perhaps for like Colin, Michelle are in the room, I'm sure you've heard that plenty of times before. But this was a unique opportunity because it was a principal who was serving an interim principalship. So she kind of had the authority to do whatever she wanted for the 1 year that she was there. And there was a culture within this school where it was kind of like old or experienced teachers versus inexperienced teachers. So there was a bit of a rift. And test scores weren't at the district's expectations. So she kind of said, I'm just gonna tear everything apart and rebuild this. And one of the things that she did, which I thought was very interesting, was she took her like 3-hour lunch period because she had to run like 3 or 4 grades through lunch. Some of it seemed like maybe it was old COVID protocols where there were like 10 minutes between lunch periods because they were probably, Cloroxing everything 15 times. And she shortened that substantially. They had some space to do so, which I know you guys don't, but that was an example of like thinking outside of the box, which then allowed her to deploy those individuals covering that extended period of lunchtime throughout the building for some of this other stuff that went on, which when they looked at the test scores and they essentially paired teachers up, not within the same grade, because that would have been too controversial. But 3rd grade teachers got paired up with a 4th grade teacher or a 6th grade teacher or K in 2nd or whatever. And they were responsible for visiting and observing that classroom. And then the vice versa would take place. And then they were to report back to the principal. This was all done, like, of course, in good faith. Like, we're all going to get better together was the message. What they learned from one another. And there were like tremendous improvements. So they created a plan, like a 2-person plan, and they worked on it, and they implemented it, and they retested, and everything was great. And it really eliminated that, recent like new hire versus experienced teacher stigma that had been there. That the cross grade sharing of how lessons can be taught and things like that. There were tremendous amount of takeaways. Test scores went up, and then all of a sudden, everyone was all in on this. Of course, everyone hated the idea to begin with, but then once they saw the results, they were like, "This is fantastic. We got to keep doing this." So it was just pretty neat to hear 45 minutes on how a district actually executes on data-driven decisions. So that was neat. But again, as I was sitting there, I was like, this is very granular. Like, this is not the role of a school committee member, although this is interesting. And Kelly probably would have assured me that a lot of those things are taking place in our district. But anyways, food was good.
That's awesome.
Food was
It
decent.
was decent.
You know, the hearing from, what's his name? Russell
Johnson.
Jackson.
Oh, yeah, the new
Yeah.
acting commissioner.
Acting commissioner.
He's, he's another dynamic speaker. He
Yeah,
great talk on Wednesday night, and then Shriver on Thursday morning was great. So
well, we found out why so many initiatives are coming out of DESI right now. Because Russell Johnson, is that his name?
Johnston, yeah.
Yeah, he's like a ball of fire. So he's got all these ideas. And so there's all these tools suddenly coming out. You must be noticing it, Beth, right? Yeah. And so I think it's because he's there churning all of this and driving it.
Yeah. He's the senior associate commissioner for special education.
He's an idea guy.
yeah, so it's pretty good stuff.
Good.
All right, we'll move on to our second presentation, which is Wit and Wisdom. So Director of Teaching and Learning, Beth Steele, Shaker Lane Principal, Michelle Kane, Russell Street Principal, Russell Street Principal, Colin McDonald will give a presentation on Wit and Wisdom.
All right, so we are here to share about Wit and Wisdom, our new K-5 literacy program, as requested, because we've brought it up a handful of times already at different meetings. And so this evening's presentation, we broke it down into 4 different parts. Thank you, Dorothy, for taking on the slides tonight. If you don't mind going to the next slide, please. So our you're right on time. Our 4 parts for this evening's presentation will be, how did we get here? We're going to explain the why and how behind the program, and then also just show you a little bit of what it is in action. And so just to remember that we started implementing this first day of school this year. It's November. All of it new. We're all still learning and figuring it out. And day by day, trying to figure out what's the best way to implement and change and go with the flow with the students that are in front of us. So how did we get here? On the next slide, please, Dorothy. Thank you. We, for our curriculum cycles, have worked with DESI offers a network that's called the Evaluate and Select High Quality Instructional Materials Network. And so they've offered it now for a variety of years, and we've taken part in it during different times when we've needed support with curriculum review cycles. The first official time we did it was with elementary math 4 years ago, and we had a good experience with it. And so we decided, since literacy we knew was going to be another big one, that we were interested in the network again. What's nice about the network is that it does provide some structure. It provides experiences from other districts that have gone or are going through the same process, and you're collaborating directly with an in-house team, but then also teams from other districts, and they give you time to network. And so we were able to, at some point, we all, and I say we all because Colin was doing it, maybe not with us, but actually with a different district the same year. And so we did go through this process together, and was able to network and figure out, what are other districts doing? How are you doing it? How you come across this area? What did you do? So it is a nice opportunity for that. And so there are 4 major phases to our curriculum review cycle. And so that first phase is that learn and prepare. During this phase, our team did a needs assessment. We created an instructional vision statement. We discussed our priorities, our parameters, the goals of our committee and our program. And we did a lot of data review and data analysis of different assessments and stringers that we do. And then we learned about what is Curate and Ed Reports, which are Ed Reports is a third-party national reviewer, evaluator of curricula, and Curate is the Massachusetts DESI version. It's a kind of basic way to explain what those 2 tools are. And so being able to figure out what are those tools and how can we use them to our benefit throughout this process. That learn and prepare phase actually started. We knew the curriculum review cycle for literacy was going to be a heavy lift. And so we started that in May of 2023. So it was the spring before diving into the actual full review. So we could get that needs assessment, that data first. And then after that, we got into the investigate and select portion, and this is really where we reviewed the curricular landscape, and by that meaning what is out there on the market, what's available, what's maybe now a little bit dated, but rated well, what's just coming out on the market. So we're reviewing all of that information, really diving into some of the materials that are available to us and evaluating that. Our preliminary review, we had 16 programs that we saw off of the ed reports, off of Curate, and then also just our classroom teachers. What have you heard friends in other districts using? What have you heard that's good? We got all that information. It got us to 16 programs. We then continued to dive into those materials. We got ourselves down to 8, which then we continued to dive deeper. We got ourselves down to 4, which became 3. And then we did some site visits. We did some field testing when we got it down to 2. We gathered data through this entire process in order to make us have an informed decision of the committee that's sitting around the table to make that decision. And then once we have the decision, we then talk about the launch, which is acquiring those materials and all that started to happen in June and over the summer. And materials for a new program, it comes at a heavy price tag, but it also comes in lots of boxes, and by boxes, then pallets. So huge thanks to Michelle, Colin, Andrea, Rebecca, Joyce Hekela, who is my admin assistant, who herself did 3 pallets or 4 pallets on her own individually over the summer. It was a huge task just to undertake emptying boxes and inventorying all those materials and all of that jazz before even getting the implementation team together to do the professional learning to be able to actually start using the materials and resources and learning about them. And so we are in phase 4 actively. We're implementing it. We're still in implementation. We're monitoring as we implement, but that will continue as we move through. And with any implementation, it really takes several years. Implementation can take anywhere from 3 to 4 to 7 years. That's what implementation science says. And so we continue to remind our educators that there's no expectation of perfect. There's no expectation of near perfect or anything of that sort. Because this is a really heavy lift. This is heavier than the math curriculum was, because it's a change in mindset, which Colin is going to speak to. And actually, yeah, I'll pass it right over to you for the 5.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So yeah, as Beth mentioned, I'll talk about the why, and really that gets to why Witten Wisdom is structured the way that it is, and why it may look a little bit different than the literacy that we were used to when we were in school, or what our teachers may have been used to teaching for the last several years. Why Witten Wisdom is set up a little bit differently, and it really comes down to, well, we've tried to boil it down to 3 different things here. One, the fact that it's a knowledge-based and building background curriculum. So we'll talk about that in a second. The idea of productive struggle for students. And finally, an isolated versus an integrated model of literacy instruction. One more. Thank you. Little activity that we did with our staff members that we are going to subject the school committee to. Can I please have a school committee member read that first passage on the left-hand side of the building background knowledge slide?
I'll do it.
Go ahead.
Having crumbled to 214 all out with Jonathan Trott's 84 not out the glue across an otherwise brittle English innings, the tourists were back in the contest when Paul Collingwood's brace had the hosts wobbling at 100 for 5 at the turn of the 21st over.
Perfect. Read fluently, all the words correct. Would you or another school committee member mind summarizing or giving the essential meaning of that passage, please?
I think this is about a sport I know nothing about.
Okay, anyone else? Any other thoughts?
I'm betting cricket.
Betting cricket. Okay. Any thoughts?
That's perhaps
Confidence level of those guesses?
medium.
Medium.
Can't go with a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, okay, fair. Good.
Excellent.
Yes, please. Great. Can I have another member read this passage, please?
Sure. The Mets are headed to the postseason after Francisco Lindor's 2-run homer in the 9th capped a wild back and forth over the final 2 innings, giving New York an 8-7 victory over the Atlanta Braves on Monday in the opener of a makeup doubleheader squeezed in before the start of the playoffs.
Brilliant, read very fluently, lovely, nice job. Would someone mind giving a summary or the essential meaning of this passage?
It summarizes a baseball game.
Summarizes a baseball game. Confidence level in that?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi,
Known
Got it.
teams, we know where they are in the season.
brilliant,
It's, yes.
wonderful, thank you. So this gets to this idea of building background knowledge, or a knowledge-based curriculum. Which, as you can see on the next slide, the research really shows that regardless of where we may be in our reading level or our reading abilities, the more background knowledge we have about a certain topic, the more we're gonna be able to comprehend what it is that is in front of us that we're reading. Even if the texts are complex, maybe a little bit above what we would typically call our level, if we have strong background knowledge in that topic, then we are going to comprehend more. So that's why Wit and Wisdom is built the way that it is. You'll see if you go into classrooms, walls that are full of vocab words, because it's really important and helpful for our students to have built that background knowledge before they dive into these complex texts. So you can see here, there's a link to the actual study, which did look at students and gave them passages about baseball and whether or not those students had strong background in baseball. The students that had a high background knowledge in baseball, regardless of their reading ability, comprehended way more than students that did not have that background knowledge. So that's really one of the cruxes that Wit and Wisdom is built off of.
Was it cricket?
It was cricket, yes, it was cricket, yes, it was. We did this activity with all of our grade level teams too, and it was a good bit of fun to have.
Yeah.
It can't even make sense.
Yeah, I know, right?
We
That's
have
the
to,
point.
so this is about culture?
That's just an example to show how a strong background knowledge is really important. We use these sports just because I think we can be relatively confident that as people living in Massachusetts, we probably have more background knowledge of baseball than we do of cricket.
The actual curriculum builds knowledge in a variety of areas. So there are social studies, there are themed units on social studies topics, there are themed units on science topics. So for example, grade 3, module 1, that they wrapped up recently was all about the ocean, studying the ocean. Module 5 was, or module 4, excuse me, was figurative literal heart, so learning about the heart, and the body, and figuratively and literally. And so that's where it is building, and 5 right now, or we're in culture, a bit of differences within culture, diverse cultures. And so it is, the topic is, and we're gonna get more to this, so I'm gonna stop talking, but there is, it spreads to other content areas.
But it crosses cultures, it's not, how siloed would you say this is? I mean, I don't mean, I don't want to start the, I should let you finish, but it brings up the questions of, students. For example, I was just traveling in New Mexico, and I mentioned to someone I went to a pueblo. Do you know what a pueblo is? It's actually a town. Yeah, but people in New England don't know that. And it's, was there a feast that day? In New England, that isn't something we would know off the top. Someone working at CBS asked me that, right? Because that's part of the culture there. And if someone were to write and explain some of that in a paragraph for a 3rd grader here, you're right, but what an opportunity to include those cultures.
Yeah, well, that's actually a really good example, because if terms like Pueblo were to come from in a 3rd grade text, we want to make sure that our students have that background knowledge
Right.
of what a Pueblo is, what culture it's part of, and that word is used, so that when our students come across that word in the complex text that they're reading, they're going to be like, oh, Pueblo, got it, no need to explain more, I already have that background knowledge built, so I can get a better understanding of what this text is actually about.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Another big aspect of Wit and Wisdom is the concept of productive struggle, and something that we're encouraging our teachers to really lean into. Gone are the days of level readers or level texts. Wit and Wisdom all has complex texts and complex tasks that are grade level appropriate and standards based. So that idea of having our students struggle productively and wrestle with their own thinking and their own learning is really important to this program, with the appropriate supports and scaffolds for those students in any way, shape, or form that they need it. So aligned to really clear, specific goals that our teachers are reiterating every lesson. There are Wit and Wisdom is built in arcs where 3 to 7 lessons are focused around the same focusing question, where students are really going deep within their learning and their reading so that they can get to those rich answers of those questions. And then lastly, the why Wit and Wisdom is structured the way that it is gets to the isolated versus the integrated model. So in previous English language arts programs, you had all of these different areas of an English class or of a literacy block, and they were all fairly standalone in how they were approached. So you may have had a separate vocabulary workbook that students were working out of, and then when it came time to transition to conventions and usage, you had a different grammar book that students would take out. And in our schedule, in fact, we had a separate reading block and a writing block where those things were taught in isolation with one another. The way that the research has changed is that now having an integrated model, like you see on the right-hand side there, where we are at the center of that instruction are topics and texts, and we are integrating all of those different elements of literacy instruction within those topics and texts. So our students are writing about what they're reading. They are using vocabulary from what they are reading about. They are participating in Socratic seminars and speaking and listening to their peers about the topics and texts that they're reading about, so that it is more integrated in the way that we actually interact with the world around us. We don't do things in isolation. We integrate all of our knowledge together and all of those skills that we have together. And that really comes from, one more, Dorothy, thank you, from the way that Wit and Wisdom is focused around essential questions. So for instance, our 4th graders just started this module, and for the next 2.5 months, they're going to be working through the question of how does a challenging setting or physical environment change a person? So they're reading texts, they're reading a survival guide, they're reading Hatchet, they're reading short stories, they're having discussions all around that one question, while also practicing their reading fluency and speaking and listening to one another and asking important questions and learning how to improve their writing and learning vocabulary and how to appropriately use grammar and conventions to get at that essential question. So it's integrating all of that around that essential question. So that's kind of the short why Wit and Wisdom is structured the way it is. Now, we're talking the how.
Okay, I'm gonna share with you the how we started, how we're here. So this summer, as Beth had on a previous slide, she put together an on-call for an implementation team. So we had members from kindergarten through grade 5, one person, all of the building administration were on the team, Beth was on the team, and we spent, I think, almost every Thursday or throughout the summer working on unpacking the modules. So every grade level has 4 modules, and they are based on that one essential question that Colin was talking about. So most of actually all of our grade levels are in their 2nd module right now. So if you look on the left where it says module and essential question, so those are 5 examples of the first module from each grade. So kindergarten did 5 senses, 2nd grade older books, all the way down to 5th grade cultures in conflict. And there was one essential question, as Colin just had on the last slide. That one question is threaded through each of that module. So 30+ lessons that are based on that essential question. So this summer with the implementation team, we really unpacked the first module, the first book, looking at how are we going to teach this? What is the vocabulary? How do we set up the slides? Some of us had gone on some site visits in the spring. So we had worked with someone from another school in North Andover that came over and provided us some of the tips and tricks that help them because it has been a heavy lift for our staff. You know, knowledge building curriculum is different than what we had before. So we spent this summer, the 5 grade level members and the admin team really prepping for the teachers when they came in. We are continuously going through the professional development. Our implementation team has not stopped. We meet every month, twice a month, every 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks. And we come back and we talk about what's going well, what are we changing, what do we need to look at? Starting to dive into the data once we're comfortable with, okay, do we have our feet on the ground, are we moving ahead? And the last piece about the how is really the communication, like constantly communicating. What are you trying? I tried this. I mean, I was in a classroom the other day and I was watching Wit and Wisdom and 2 times the 2 teachers went, I tried this, but did you get this part? And it was so great. And they're looking at me like, oh my gosh. And I said, this is great. This is how we learn. We talk to each other and we say, I tried this, this didn't go well. And we're supposed to do that, but are you doing that whole group or are you breaking them up? So it is great to see the teachers learning together and supporting each other because it is different and it is hard for them. And we keep telling them the famous phrase, brace and space. We are going through this and we are learning. It's going to be a couple of years before we feel really good. So to jump back to the slide on the left, I just listed 5 modules. As I said, there's 4 modules in each grade level. So everybody is now in their second module. So we start with like a big umbrella of the module and the essential questions. And then there are 4, 5 arcs in each one, in each module. So those 4 or 5 arcs break down to 5 lessons, maybe, it varies, that are in that one arc, focusing on one question. So you have your essential question, then you have maybe 4 or 5 arcs that have 4 or 5 focusing question tasks that are all coming back to support that essential question. I'm using my hands, so I'm a visual learner, and you think of the arcs. And then when you break each arc down, which probably has 4 or 5, maybe 6 lessons, you'll see on the way right of the slide that that's the sequence of how the lesson flows. And we have big stars next to the learn because that is where the bulk of the lesson is. That is where the bulk of the building of that knowledge happens. Colin talked about grade level text. You know, a lot of times, every time, sorry, you will hear the teacher reading the story first. The teacher will read the story second. Then they will break down and they will do a fluency passage and they'll read a piece of it. So they're building that knowledge together with the teacher starting and then eventually letting the students off on their own, releasing that scaffold, and then breaking it down. So you'll see that sometimes in the launch. Sometimes you'll see it as like a homework piece, but we're not really sending it home. It's just fluency practice. So you have your welcome, your launch. Learn is the heart of the lesson. Landing is where they are wrapping it up, and then deep dive usually consists of vocabulary or grammar. Thank you, Beth. So that's the how. That's the makeup of the program. Next slide, please, Dorothy. This is a picture of the top section. I'll have Colin talk about in a second. I'm just going to jump to the bottom. So on the bottom on the left, you can see that's Mrs. Holm, a 2nd grade teacher. I think I snapped this picture Monday. They had just started a new lesson. I'm sorry, a new module. Let me go back 1 second. Each module has a number of authentic texts in there. So the students are reading 4 books, 3 books in an arc, and then the next arc has 2 books, and there might be a poem, there might be a piece of art. They're analyzing all of this information as text, even art as text. So she was reading this book to the kids on the rug. The one in the center and the right was a kindergarten classroom. They are currently in their module is about seasons. So they were learning about fall, winter, spring, and summer. And on the right is a kindergartner who wrote "The Nights Are Long," which for kindergarten, this is like a 5, almost 6-year-old, and she got her name right. That's little Iris. You can see the night is, she's got S and then long. She's kind of stretching that. So again, using some of the letters, the foundations program that they've used, and starting, what they had to do is Mrs. Barth read the book to them, and they had to go into the text. You can see a sticky note in the middle picture. They had to find something that they were going to write about. And this was one lesson, reading the book to them, finding a sticky note, and what do you see in this picture? And she remembered the nights are long. So, do you want to talk about? that?
Yeah, sure. So the three pictures on top are from Russell Street. That first picture on the top left comes from one of our student workbooks or our student binders. I want to give a shout out to all of our teachers who took all of the materials from those boxes and from those pallets. And through our work over the summer with the implementation team and some of the guidance that we got from another district who's a few more years into their implementation, our teachers have been taking the materials from Wit and Wisdom and adapting them to meet the needs of our students, sometimes, giving more space on the page for students to write, or maybe giving some guiding questions for students. So our students all have binders that they're working out of to do all of their work. In the middle picture there, I can't tell you how many times I'll go into a classroom and students are up and out of their seats and moving around and doing things on chart paper. There are so many cool different types of lessons. This is obviously something where students are making observations and wonderings about a text that they were interacting with and going up and putting their sticky notes and looking at their peers' sticky notes and seeing if they have similar comments and putting check marks next to the ones that are similar to theirs. And then the third picture on the right there is a small snapshot of some of the vocabulary that our students are working on. All of our classrooms have vocab word walls. As they get into new texts and new topics, they are always adding those vocab cards. Mr. Romano and I dressed up as Wit and Wisdom for Halloween this year. So we had vocab cards all over ourselves and a big laminated sheet, so that was fun. But I also do want to point out, you can see it in that picture, there's art vocabulary there. And as Michelle mentioned, there are a lot of tie-ins to the arts within Wit and Wisdom. Each module has different pieces of artwork that students are, again, looking at through that essential question and dissecting and investigating those works of art through the lens of both an artist and a reader. And I want to give a shout out to Ms. Hemis as well, our art teacher in both schools, who has really taken all of those pieces of art and are integrating them into her art UA class as well. I know she's working on Frank Lloyd Wright with one of the grade levels right now, because that's coming up in their module at Russell Street. So she's talking about different styles of architecture in her art class because it's coming up in their Wit and Wisdom. So a lot of great work happening all over the place.
I was in, just to tack on to that, I was in a first grade classroom one day this week, and one of the kids said, I've seen that painting before. And another kid chimed in, yeah, we just did that with Mrs. Hemis. So it was like, oh, like the lights are clicking, right? They're making those connections. Another kid was like, we did that. And I was, oh yeah, we did that. So it was great. I think that is the end of our presentation at the moment. I do want to add that PD is still ongoing. As I mentioned, the implementation team, we still have that. We just sent, I think, every grade level, grade 2 is coming up. Every grade level has gone on another visit to North Andover. A few people went from the reading curriculum committee back in the spring, but now that we've got our feet wet, we're moving forward. I mean, my kindergarten and first grade teachers came back and were elated, and second grade was like, oh, we didn't see the email, can we go? And Mrs. Field made it happen, and we're making progress, but it is hard. It is hard work for our teachers, and I think North Andover said, you guys are so far ahead of the game. And so that made them feel good, but they're like, we know where you are. And I think one of the presenters called it the Valley of Despair. So sometimes we're there and sometimes we're climbing out and we're helping each other. And, I think it's getting a little bit easier, but it's a lot of planning, a lot of preparation, different curriculum that we used to, but teachers are making it work. Next, Mrs. Stitt. Questions?
Questions, comments? Jenny, you want to start?
Yeah, is there a direct line between this into, in junior and senior high school, working with analytical and critical thinking, which is what this sounds like it's really prepping for? Like, is there a curriculum arc?
So we have, so there is like an interesting split from 5 to 6, right? So our goes through grade 5, our curriculum maps at the elementary level, and then 6 to 12, the departments, majority of their departments are grades 6 to 12. So there is kind of this natural split between 5 and 6. However, I will say what our grades 5 and 16 do very well is they communicate with each other to ensure that there is as smooth as possible transition, not only between schools, right, that happens between all of our shifts between schools, but also with regards to curriculum and content. And so when we've had our curriculum reviews, we've invited our 6 to 12 curriculum coordinators to be part of that process in any way, shape, or form that they are able and willing to be part of that process, so that they are able to help inform once the student gets through grade 5, what they may experience in 6 through 12, but also so that they have a heads up of this is kind of the direction that it's changing into. So that way that continuation can happen and can exist.
So it doesn't sound like there's a formal arc, but but you were working to create an informal continuation.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, their curriculum changes. Majority of all of them change between 5 and 6. And so that does the formal connectedness does shift, but the skills is certainly a continuation.
Thanks.
It will become more formalized in time. I mean, we're gonna have a group of students coming up from elementary school that really are used to interdisciplinary learning, project-based learning. And that shift, that mindset shift is going to be necessary for those students to continue on that trajectory. So it's kind of interesting to watch that process as it unfolds, especially when you're starting from the grassroots, the pre-K up. And the shift is successful, but there's, starting next year in our middle school, the grade 6 teachers are going to be faced with that mindset shift. There's no difference. It was a little bit different than when we integrated technology. I mean, we had classes that or schools, the middle school, for example, was soaring along, and the high school teachers had to adjust to that rather quickly and shift their mindset in terms of how to use technology to enhance learning opportunities for students. So, kind of a nice way of implementing shifts in instructional pedagogy. I'm really excited about this because this is something that, in my opinion, is going to be a game changer. When you start integrating curriculum into your ELA, I mean, it just brings everybody together. And we talk about our Shaker Lane project. Can't get off that Shaker Lane project. Talk about it for 2 seconds. I mean, these are some of the things that we're doing, and as a result of that, the design of the Shaker Lane School is specific to these kinds of things, and it's all for giving our students those opportunities to interact, learn things in an interdisciplinary fashion, and it's the amount of learning that is going to happen as a result of this shift is going to be incredible. I already see it. I mean, I've been in grade 2 classrooms, and the vocabulary that they've been starting to use is mind-blowing because that foundation is being built, and then they get excited about this new knowledge that they're learning, and then they're fired up about writing. So I'm so excited about this, and I can't, hardly wait to see this next year. It's going to be huge in terms of what our students are doing. So,
Well, Janine, you asked a good question, and we talk about that a lot at different grade levels. It's going to be interesting to see in 3 or 4 years, how are these kids coming in answering questions for the middle school? I think Colin's 5th grade team has the heaviest lift because we're building it for them. So I think it's so hard for grade 5. But in 4 or 5 years, what's that going to look like for grade 5 when they have learned this language and they learned, all of the skills that we're building? So it's going to be interesting to see if this critical thinking, this different type of displaying information, sharing information, communicating, how it affects the middle school and high school. Interesting.
That's why I was asking with the program.
I don't think we'll see it for a few years, but like 3 or 4 years. But.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this. I'm very impressed with the process for selecting this and all the steps you went through to make sure this was going to be the right fit for Littleton. So thank you for all that hard work. And also, it's really impressive how invested the principals are in this, because we shouldn't take that for granted. That does not happen in every district, that principals get involved with gaining such a deep knowledge of the curriculum and then being a leader in your school for driving the initiative, like that's. I think we're so used to seeing it in Littleton that we think it's like that everywhere, and it is not. So thank you. And with all the other things you have going on, you know, that you are so invested in this, it's just really exciting. And this looks really inquiry-based to me, which aligns with so many other objectives that we have for, you know, student discourse and critical thinking. Yeah, it's great. So I did have 3 questions. I'll try not to go too long, but I just want to make sure I understand. So there's one essential question for the first module across K-5.
Across, so so if you're in kindergarten,
Yeah.
their first module was called the senses.
Yeah.
There's one essential question for that module.
Okay, but it's not the same essential question, because I thought that would be mind blowing.
Yeah.
That.
So very incredible.
Okay.
Yeah, so one essential question for every module. So every grade level will have 4 essential questions.
Right. That makes more
Yeah.
sense. And what is the best practice now with teaching vocabulary? I know it's kind of been all over the place. So where did it land with this curriculum? Because we talk so much about, you know, don't pre-teach it, teach it in context, but
Yeah.
what is how do they?
I'll start and then you can feel free to jump in. That's one of the things that the trainers told us is that don't put the word up yet on your wall. Like when Colin showed that, that's after they've taught it, because they do want the kids to have that productive struggle. They want them to have the conversation. They want the teacher to read the book and kind of figure things out. There is a lot of instruction in vocabulary in the deep dive, which is part of the lesson at the end. So there's instruction about it. There's questions about it. They talk about it, it's posted up there, they have the visual, they have the words. So it's taught in context, not in isolation.
Okay, and so it sounds like it's getting hit from multiple points
Yeah.
in a certain
Did I
lesson.
miss anything?
No, yeah, and I would just say it is continuously brought up throughout the entirety of the module. You know, a vocab word will be taught, and then students are expected to use that vocabulary word in their own writing. I was in a 4th grade class last week and witnessing a Schcmte seminar, which is basically a student-led discussion, and the teacher was encouraging students to try to use at least 3 of their vocab words during that discussion, so that they can practice using those vocab words in a conversation. So it's always coming back up and around after it's been explicitly taught to the kids.
Love that. And so my last question is, I understand what a big shift this is for the teachers, because it's a huge shift in mindset from what they were doing before, which relied on a real belief system. So you have to kind of pull them out of the belief system, and then this is another completely different philosophy. So you were talking about productive struggle, which I think is so important. How do you support teachers with that productive struggle when, you know, if something doesn't go well, and how do you keep them from saying these kids can't do this?
A couple things are coming to mind. So first, wisdom is the way that it's structured is, I don't want to say spiraled, but there are skills that come up continuously throughout the year. So if a student isn't mastering a skill the first time they're exposed to it, we're not going to belabor that or halt everything that we're doing until everybody has mastery, because we know if we look forward in the scope and sequence, that skill is going to come up again, and we're going to see a little bit of progress for students a little bit later in the year, and again later in the year. So by the end of the year, they're going to have multiple exposures to that skill so that they can continually get better. The other thing that I'm thinking of is we've been talking a lot in our implementation team and as an admin team about how we scaffold appropriately for students. We want to scaffold, not rescue. So a lot of times teachers, if a student's struggling, they really want to just make sure that they're getting it, but sometimes what that leads to is a little too much hand-holding. And we're always encouraging our teachers to scaffold just to that, you know, zone of proximal development or wherever a student may be, so that they can get there on their own with the tools that are right for that student.
I just want to add also, our special education teachers went through this training as well, and they are integral parts of creating that scaffold for students with disabilities. There's also a resource that we have found useful. It's called the multilingual resource for multilingual learners, but we have found that the approaches are really for students who are struggling. So we've pulled some of those scaffolds in to help the kids until they're able to maybe lean away from them when they can.
Yeah, and I
we
think
talk
that,
about- No, go ahead. We also talk about productive struggle as adults, right? Like how we are productively struggling currently.
Yeah.
Right, and it's okay to like acknowledge that and show that and share that with a colleague because you'll realize what you're struggling with, someone else is also struggling with, right? And so we support our students and encourage our students to experience productive struggle, but it's also a really good way for any learner to learn. And so we encourage, that's why grace and space, but also like constant communication. So that way people know you're not alone in any of this struggle that you're having.
yeah, I love how you've set up the system so that the teachers feel like they're on a collaborative team, that they're not isolated struggling with this on their own. So really, it feels like you've launched this in the best way possible. So I'm really excited.
And I think the part of the admin team too is going through that struggle with them. So you talked about us, you know, being there, and you don't see this in other districts. It really was that they felt supported, truly supported during every meeting, curriculum meetings, implementation team meetings, grade level meetings. I think every lesson, every week, I mean, we're all in somebody's classroom looking at it, saying, what do you need? How's it going? How is that? Watching them talk. So it's really just being there, walking the walk with them.
So thank you for all you're doing. This is amazing.
I poked around the internet on wit and wisdom and I've got a couple questions. By and large, it seems like it's a terrific program. I'm thrilled that we selected it and that we're diving all in. I was curious about some of the feedback I saw. Districts that have implemented this in the past, perhaps, you know, wit and wisdom has evolved since we've gotten our crack at it, but initial feedback was like the pacing of this seems to be difficult. So they were saying like to tackle one of these lessons, it's essentially like you kind of need to dedicate 90 minutes a day for your ELA. And I was just wondering, do we have 90 minutes in a day or do we need to think about our schedule and potentially allow for more ELA time since we have, you know, we're teaching science through reading, we're teaching math, through, you know, we're that cross curriculum thing that's happening with this program. Do we have enough room in our schedule for it? I'm seeing shaking heads, so we're all set there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm happy to start and then, yes, that is a huge concern. And I think for any district, sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to be standing up for my camera or not.
We can hear
I
you.
don't know if
Okay,
people
great.
yes.
Yeah, that is a major barrier when it comes to wit and wisdom. We are able to have 90 minutes. So 1 through 5 have 90 minutes a day dedicated for literacy. Like Colin said, in the past, we've had 45 minutes for reading, 45 minutes for writing. We combined
Okay.
that time. So we do have 90 minutes. With that being said,
Still a struggle.
it's still difficult, and particularly because it's a new curriculum. Any curriculum, right? It could be a 45-minute lesson, you would struggle to get it in 60 minutes, right? Like anything new, just because you're still learning it yourself, it's hard and takes more time to put it into play. But the benefit is that we do in our schedules have the 90 minutes. K is different in the sense that they have slightly less time. They have the 75 minutes in their schedule. But they also have less lessons, so they have a little bit more time within the school year, whereas grade 5 in our pacing guide that we mapped out this summer, they're to June 16th. Because they just have more lessons. And so every grade level is slightly different with that, but we do have the time within our schedule as it lies currently.
So in the spring, when this program was selected, both of our schools were kind of holding on schedules to
Okay.
see what we had to allow. So we really did pre-think that before we built our schedule. So everything was on hold until June 6th. I'll never forget that day because I was like, we usually have our schedules done for the following year. But we had to wait because we knew that if this program was chosen, we needed dedicated 90 minutes. What we have found is some of the lessons take 2 days, some of them don't. Beth just mentioned that we created a pacing guide that was part of the implementation in the summer. So what we did was we broke down each of the 4 modules and we dedicated a period of time that we are all going to stop on November 4th. And then we'll have a few catch-up days and then we're all going to start module 2, no matter where you are. Just finishing the arc that you're in so that you've finished all of the all of the content framing questions and other craft questions that are tied to the focusing question task. So when she says grade 5, she's talking about that math, because they have so many lessons, they are going all the way up. Most of them stop around mid-May, but there is this catch-up time that if the lesson is taking 2 days, it's okay because we have these times, but we do have hard stops to start module 2, hard stops to start module 3 and 4, so that we can at least get our feet in all of the modules and see what they all look like.
And we did that as a way to, because that's a barrier, right? Because some districts told us last year when we did visits that they were doing module 1 into January. And that, I mean, that's half your school year and you have 4 modules and you're only doing 1, right? And so that's why we're in module 2 already, looking at the school year, trying to break it down.
Because
So,
pacing is, that's a concern. Yep.
And so I think other districts, they got the material, they started it, and they were like, whoa, we're behind grade level here, and, you know, we have, Massachusetts has its own standard for grade level, and we just got the MCAS information, so we kind of know who's on grade level, who's partially meeting, not meeting as it relates to Massachusetts standards, but, you know, maybe just something to think about since it's a national program. What are our thoughts on that? But this question's kind of too late to be asked, but I'm still kind of curious. Did we screen books as it relates to the Wit and Wisdom program, or did we just like push the submit button and all the pallets showed up and we got everything? Or did we have a committee go through? Because I mean, it's not, we don't have parents coming in here saying this book's too early for this, you know, for this grade level and all that good stuff. These concepts are too far advanced. You're showing the dark side of history too early. But that certainly is taking place other places. Did we consider any of that, or?
Oh, yes.
Well, lots of conversations.
Yeah, certainly. So that, I mean, it's all part of the curriculum, right? And they were very strategic and intentional in the books that they put into the program.
Yeah.
And it is one thing that it does not avoid hard history. It does not avoid hard topics, right? We did preview, and especially during field testing, some of the actual books were used and taught in lessons, and we've had conversations about that. And our educators are using family letters to let people know about what's being covered in this module, how it's being covered. Colin and I continue to have conversations about our resources and how moving forward and what that looks like and what that can look like. So yes, we certainly preview before we hit the go on that.
Good. And one of my last questions is there's, which I'm sure you're aware of, but it's, you know, like English language learners, those on IEP, those with a learning disability, or those that are maybe behind grade level reading, you know, it's like, this is going to be extra hard for them. So it's, you know, related back to your question is what additional supports are in place, or do we have to beef up the supports? Because the rigor of Wit and Wisdom is that, you know, it builds, and if you don't have, it's like reading that cricket passage. We were like, what are you talking about? So it's just something that we're all need to be aware of and make sure that those supports take place, because you could get lost quickly if the class is moving along and you're not grasping what's being taught.
Great. One of the things we found, and we're probably going to do a better job next year, because once we know better, we can do better, is to really try to lock all the children in for the first 45 minutes of the Wit and Wisdom lesson, because that is where all that building knowledge happens. And then it kind of breaks out into activities that can be scaffolded, but really trying to keep the kids in there to talk, to hear everything, to listen to the teacher, to have the conversation. And then it comes to the independent work that needs to be scaffolded. So we've tried to move schedules around, but this is something that once we started talking with Allie Gilman, our director of special education, she reached out to a few other teams in areas, I think you did as well, Beth, as we were trying to say, all right, how do we have these kids get the most information so they can read a little bit in that cricket packet? And that's going to happen within the first 45 minutes of that lesson. So we're really trying to keep all kids there as engaged as possible to get that bit of information before we scaffold it. That's one thing.
And we have been moving in that direction before we implemented this curriculum. I mean, we pushed hard as a district to be as inclusive as possible. Have every child be in front of the teacher that is the expert in that particular subject discipline. And, you know, it's a balance, but we are very cognizant of the need to have every student, if possible, in that classroom where that kind of instruction is occurring. So we envision as we continue to integrate that we're gonna see more movement of specialists into the classroom. And then point out in small groups after that instruction has happened, and maybe some team teaching going on.
Does the program give suggestions for accommodating students with disabilities or multilingual learners, or does it really come from the expertise in your building?
So the way the program is rigorous, there's no denying it. And everyone we talk to that's put it into play will say it's a rigorous program, right? So the key is really how do we make entry points? How do we make multiple access points so that all students, no matter where they're starting from, can get into it? And so one of the factors that we liked was the lesson structure and setup. And so each lesson has a different style to it. And so there are some lessons that are, no matter who's in the space, it's accessible because the style of lesson it is. There's a lot of noticing and wondering. So the student can have the book in their hands and they're flipping through the pages, looking at more at the pictures than they are at the words, right? And so there is an entry level part of, so that's the program, the structure, which is kind of what we like, that it's rigorous, but we like the structure to support there. There is, Michelle mentioned the MLR, the multilingual resource, which we have continuously gone back to them and said, we know you call it the multilingual resource, but this is just good practice for any type of student. They keep maintaining the name multilingual resource, whatever, but we continue to say that people use that no matter what student you're looking at, because it has good ideas and good practices. One struggle that is a difficulty, right, is that it's not a program that says, here are 10 scaffolded resources that you can pick from to implement with a student that has X, Y, or Z, right? Or this particular learning profile. And so that's where our special education educators are working with our general education educators and really trying to create, okay, what is the entry point for this student to this lesson and creating it. And so that's why there's a lot of those scaffolds being created and made, which is what makes year one incredibly heavy of a lift. And as we continue to move forward, we'll have those kind of tools in our tool belt to be able to pull from, but they're in creation mode right now, which is part of why when we talk with teachers, it's a lot of time and a lot of work.
Because there are students with varying needs, so it's a matter, and if my memory serves me right, I believe there are some scaffolds mentioned in each of the lessons. There's like a little gray box that has some ideas as well, but again, is it tailored to the needs of the kids in front of those educators? So this is why it's hard, it's making sure every kid, like that said, has a way to connect and access it.
So great that you're approaching it with such a team approach. How did you say it? Space and grace?
Yeah, grace and space.
Grace and space. That allows teachers to be vulnerable, knowing that everyone's in the same boat. Yeah, and that it is rigorous, but so exciting.
So I'll share, I think a fun story. So my third grader, I'm like, how's school today? You get the good fine, like the one word answers, right? So it gets fleshed out that she had a special guest in the classroom today. I'm like, oh, really? The whole day? And she's like, no, just during wit and wisdom. And I'm like, oh yeah, tell me about that. So then, all of a sudden it's like a 50-minute conversation. We read this book, it's about Galileo. He's from here, he did this. He prototyped telescopes, he learned about the moon and it was bumpy and so, I mean, it was pretty cool. Like, it wasn't just school was fine. It was like, let me tell you everything I learned about it, today's wit and wisdom thing. So, it's like firsthand evidence that it works.
Awesome. That's a great anecdote.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
It's those stories that we like,
Yeah.
right, need to be shared and heard. And
right.
it's helpful. Yeah.
Like 10 minutes later, I'm on YouTube and someone's reading the book to me and she's like pointing out the pictures and stuff from today's lesson. So
Yeah.
I was
It's
talking
pretty
to
cool.
Jen Jones this afternoon, and she was showing a video that was part of the wit and wisdom lesson, and the kids were like, We want to keep watching it. We don't want to stop. We want to find out what happens. She was gonna be happy. She was saying, can we watch during snacks? So it was just great to see those pockets of excitement, to hear that. It's great.
Fifth graders are studying wordplay and they were watching the Abbott and Costello, who's on first skit this week. So I've seen a lot of Abbott and Costello this week.
Hear that through the halls,
Yeah.
for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
Well,
All right.
well, I'm glad we asked for you to explain this to us. This was
Yeah.
Very fun.
great to know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. You can tell Jason that we all got applause.
Yeah. It's got an influence on us.
All right, presentation number 3, an update on the cross-district PD day. Beth Seal again, take it away.
It's not what over there. Okay, Lori, he's on first. She's.
All right. Cross-district PD, and the two of you participating in cross-district PD, so please don't feel that you have to stay. Long drives are hard and long days. I don't know if I'm able to give you a pass, but I'm
You are.
happily giving you a pass with confidence right now.
The official pass.
Thank you for.
Thank you, boss.
Bill's had a lot of late nights lately.
Exactly, yes, yes.
Sure.
All right, so cross-district professional development. This year, it was on November 5th, 2024, just a couple weeks ago, always falls on that election day. And so this year, next slide, Dorothy, please, was our 8th year participating in this cross-district professional development. We have participated over these past 8 years with 2 neighboring districts, so Air Shelley Regional School District, as well as Harvard School District. And so the 3 of us come together, and it really does take a year of planning and figuring out what are we going to do? How did we go last year? How do we improve? All of these good things. And so we also rotate who hosts it. And so this year, the day was hosted by Air Shirley at their high school. And so it was the second time, but it had been a while since we've been there. And so it was, it felt kind of like a new space again to us. And it's always interesting when you go to a somewhat new building, and particularly now with our Shaker Lane building project, being in somewhat new schools and kind of seeing how they built it and all that, really interesting too. So it's a nice lens for those of us that are doing that project here in town as well. So we have about 300 educators participate in the day this year. And then we had throughout the course of the day, we had 43 workshops and they were divided into different sessions. And then on that previous slide on the right, you saw a flyer. Can you go back? Dorothy? Oh, that's okay. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. That flyer on the right there, Educating for a Better Future for All, was the title of our day this year. With just some brief snippets, it was kind of our save the date that we sent out early in the fall to let our educators know the theme and what was going to be happening. A big thank you to Paul Orzik. He's our Library Media Center specialist at the high school. And he, for the past several years, I have just sent him an email saying, here's the theme, or here's the title of the day, here's the pertinent information. Can you create something? And every time, every year, we're always so impressed with his creativity. It's really wonderful. So kudos to Paul and big thank you to him for creating yet another really nice flyer for us. On the next slide, you will see the agenda for the day. And so you see, we welcomed people who were able to come in, grab some light refreshments, catch up. What's interesting is arriving to the conference, we had people arriving just before 8 o'clock, and 8 to 8:30, they were just able to gather together. And so it was nice for people to see each other, to sit, even just within Littleton, they were able to connect with people that they don't typically see at other schools. And then also because we've been doing this for so many years, they now have those relationships for some from other districts. And so it was time for them to connect with those individuals, which is always kind of fun and nice to see. And so we do support bingo throughout the entire day, which is a fun way to keep people engaged and keep different activities going. And again, to really harness and support that relationship building between individuals throughout the day. So you'll see that the day was structured really into 4, 5 if we include lunch. So lunch is important, 5 parts. So we this year dove right into workshops. Feedback that we've received from the past was let's try not doing it, just, let's just get into it. And so, as you can imagine, our team had a lot of discussion about the pros of that, the cons of that, all of these good things, and we said, let's do it, let's try it, see how it goes. And we got really great feedback about this structure this year, which was exciting. And so what ended up happening, like I said, we had 43 workshops. Those 43 workshops were divided into these different workshop times. And so they were 60 minutes apiece. So people started at their 8:45 to 9:45 workshop, and then they had 15 minutes to find their way to their second workshop. And then we had lunch in a large space. And what happened to be November 5th was a gorgeous day outside. It was a warm November day, so people were able to eat outside. They were able to go for a walk outside. One of the, and we'll see in the feedback, you never know sometimes with that many people and you're serving how quickly or slowly the line is gonna go. And so we provided a good amount of lunchtime in order for that to happen. Also, as educators, as professionals, sometimes don't get a lot of time for lunch. And this was a day that we said, you know what, you can sit down, you can eat your lunch, you can socialize, you can catch up on what you've learned and all of that good stuff. And some feedback was like, can you shorten lunch this time? Which is just really funny, because you're like, sure, like that, interesting. But also it's because the lunch lines went really, that was really well done and strategically placed. So there were a lot of good factors happening there. And so after lunch, we had another workshop where there were, again, varied sessions. So there were 43 total sessions, I'm saying, but there were some that were doubled up, meaning offered more than in one workshop session timeframe. And so each workshop session had about 15 to 17 options to pick from. And I will see them on the next slides. For every single workshop session, I had a difficult time picking which workshop I wanted to actually go to, because there were just so many really wonderful options this year. And then we always incorporate department time or grade level team time within the day for those individuals at a particular grade level or within a department to come together to share what they learned during the day, but then also to touch base on what's going on within your content area, within your grade level, what you're implementing, what's happening, all of those other things. So it's time for them to really kind of dig into what they want to talk about. We do provide a protocol if they choose to participate in the protocol, if they want and need that sort of structure. But a lot of times they have their own ongoings and it's really time for them to catch up on that. And then we always do a feedback survey at the end of the day to see what went well and what we can improve upon. Over the next couple of slides, you'll see the varied workshop titles that were offered during each session. Each session had a handful of workshops that were offered by Littleton educators. During the first workshop, I was running around trying to get pictures. And then workshop 2 and 3, I got sucked into the workshops and I couldn't leave the spaces. And so I didn't necessarily get pictures of all of our wonderful presenters. But on the top left, you can see Nicole Patterson and Susan Mitchell, who were offering the workshap napkins to support the standards. And in the bottom left, you see Rita McKinley. And then in the distance of that photo, you can see Susan Mitchell, Heidi McGregor, and Amy Metcalf, who shared about their Empowering Families, which is a really wonderful event that they have created and built out at Russell Street over the years. And so sharing their experience through that. New this year during workshop 1, the last workshop there, it was a student teaching teachers pilot. And so we had students from Littleton High School that worked with Julie Ward. There were 4 students who really wanted to demonstrate how Canva can be used in the classroom and how we can use that as a tool, as a learning tool, as a teaching tool in the classroom. And so these 4 students collaborated with Julie Ward to create a presentation for teachers on this day. And they came and offered this workshop, and it was really awesome. So we had students teaching teachers the professional development, right? Which I've heard in various places, and it's always kind of like, does it work? How does it work? It works. It was great. It was really well received. The students did a lovely job. And then the educators that participated in that really felt like they got a lot out of it. And so we were happy with that mini pilot that we did. And it's something that we're going to consider expanding upon for future years, which is exciting. Workshop 2 on the next slide, please, Dorothy. Again, you see some of our Littleton educators on the right, Julie Ward, Cody Fontaine from the tech department, offered a session related to AI. And then some of our members of our special education department, Ali Gilman, Mike Jarvis, and Margaret Deslins offered 2 workshops. One specifically, because we have the new IEP was released. And so they offered 1 workshop geared towards special education educators, and they had 1 workshop geared towards general education educators, being able to say, here's the new IEP, this is how you read it, and all of those good things. And then the third workshop on the next slide, please. Again, a whole variety of options for our educators to pick from. Lynn Snow offered a self-care workshop. That's pictured in that top picture. And then the bottom picture, we have Crystal Dion, our 7th grade science educator at the middle school, and Meredith Perry, our wellness, health and wellness educator at the high school, collaborated on a session on AI, using AI to really understand and teach the standards. So lots of variety and options. And we brought in not only our own educators from other districts, provided workshops, and then we brought in a handful of outside consultants to offer some of these workshops as well. Some of the ones that we knew our educators were going to want to attend because of previous feedback, because of just ongoing current conversations in our districts of who's going to attend what. And so it was nice to be able to bring in some outside consultants too, to offer that as well. And then on the next slide shows some of that fun. We during a PD day, PD can be as exhausting as any other school day. And so we try to make sure that we build in some fun to have throughout the day. So like I said, we have that bingo board and then bingo prizes that whenever anyone completed bingo, they would come to the front lobby and pick out a nice little prize. And then the 2 videos that are here are from the self-care for educators workshop. And this was an outside consultant that was brought in to talk about self-care and different strategies that can be had. And you'll see we had a good amount of other video shows why. So they definitely had a good time, but also afterwards, after each of those sessions, someone would come up to me and say, that was such a good session because they talked about different ways we can do, and we learned a dance, I can teach it to you. It's like, oh, I'm gonna need to learn this dance, I think. So I haven't learned it yet, but it is on my to-do list to learn that with them as well. Perfect, there we go. Oh, here we go. Thank you, Dorothy. We always collect feedback at the end of the day just to see what went well, what can be improved upon, anything of that sort. And so the workshops, we asked our educators to rate the workshop from 1 to 5 of, effectiveness of what did you get out of it. And so we were really impressed with the results of the workshops this year, really high ratings of our workshops, which to us indicates we got the topics offered that people wanted to attend and wanted to learn. And the presenters did an amazing job actually making sure that the information was conveyed in a clear way that the educators were able to take that and go from there. And so we have some quotes from some of our educators, liking the variety of topics, of how they were able to kind of put what they learned right into action, right into play. So it was really nice. And even jumping out the Canva presentation, having the students present. And then one other piece of the feedback is that the feedback is always a lot of information. It's a lot of information to read, to digest, and to go through. And we go through all of it. But considering the increase of the topic of AI and the different AI workshops that were offered, Julie Lord said, why don't I take all this feedback and put it into AI? And let's just get a quick review of what it said. And so on the next slide, you will see exactly that. And so we ended up putting the feedback into AI and said, can you summarize this PD day for us? And give me, feedback, how it was, recommendations for improvement and all of this good stuff. And so this is what came out. And it's funny because Julie shared it and she was like, hey, look at this. And so she shared it with us and I was like, okay, interesting. Like, this is really interesting. And then I went and read the feedback and I was like, holy cow, I didn't need to actually read the feedback. AI definitely got the nail on the head with the review of it. So it's always just kind of nice to see like how accurate is that summarizing of it. But it was really accurate with regards to what I read in all of the feedback from our educators. And so major takeaways for us is that we this year people really enjoyed the no keynote and just diving into the workshops. So that's something that we might continue to explore. Re-examining the schedule and looking at the time frame of the different items that are offered and making sure that the length of things, including lunch, is just right. And then continuing with, making sure that we have a good variety of content and outside providers to be able to provide that support on that day for our educators. So that is an overview of our process day from this year.
I love how this feels like a conference. Conference. But it just, I can't go. It just sends such a message of respect for the teachers, like that you value them and you want to give them a good experience. You want to treat them like grown-ups. Which I think sometimes in the teaching profession, you kind of, you're in there with the kids and you don't get these professional experiences. So this is fantastic. So I did have one question. Like a teacher could kind of bounce from workshop to workshop to workshop without necessarily having a through line of something that they're trying to learn more deeply. I don't even know if Desi's still talking about individual professional development plans. Is that still a thing?
Yes.
Do you ask teachers to develop a plan that would guide their path through these workshops?
So we ask teachers we always send ahead of time, like, here are the workshops that are going to be offered on this day. Here's a little info about them. And then before the day, we do ask for signups ahead of time. So that way people are able to kind of look through and see what they want and whatnot. We do allow that choice day of, or sign up, a couple of days ahead of time, because we also know that our educators are never just working on one thing at a time, right? We know when we go for recertification, we have just to have a certain amount of PDPs in pedagogy, a certain amount of SEI, a certain amount, right, in these different categories. And so being able to attend different sessions helps them kind of potentially build up those professional learning hours that they can handle and create PDPs from. In the past, on this day, we have provided pathways, and that it went well. The feedback on it wasn't like, this is awesome, we should totally do pathways every year. I think there is some day of people can definitely, there's enough for people to create their own through line. Someone could have been in AI the entire day.
Yeah.
Someone could have been right in self-care majority of the day. And so there's definitely the through line that can be made if a teacher wants, but it's not forced by any means.
I'm gonna use the phrase, professionals want to do things with you, not you doing things for them all the time. And philosophically, we have a firm belief that we've hired great professionals and we need to give them the freedom to make a choice. That's how they become better rather than being directed all the time. I mean, we have enough direction in our district in terms of initiatives. And that ability for spontaneity is an important part of professional development.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in some districts where it seems like every district interprets the PDP rules differently, which is interesting to me. But in some districts where I've worked, like you would have to bundle the 10 contact hours into PDPs. You would also have to have a reflection. But that was just one district's interpretation. That's not.
It depends. You're supposed to have a product of
Right.
your learning in some way, shape, or form. And so a lot of districts will do a reflection on that. And it's interesting too, because the PDP is an independent right? And so we as a district can kind of provide as much support or as little support. We like to ensure that we're providing as much support as we can without kind of going overboard and being too direct.
Yeah, and we're not the licensing authority. I mean, it's a professional obligation. From a litigation standpoint, I mean, we're, as the superintendent's precaution, that, you know, you keep it as a professional responsibility, because the minute you dip your toe in the water too far, you're gonna inherit liability for the teachers. So what we do is we certainly send out notices when their certification is coming up, et cetera. We really don't have to do that, but it's good for us to do it, because we keep tabs on them, and you know, teachers are busy, and sometimes that little bit of a nod and recognition that your certification is up in 6 months, and let us know if, you know, we can help you with PT.
It's a nice service you provide.
What's that?
That's a nice service you provide.
It has really helped us throughout the years,
To not
rather
have
than
those
having
oops
people
moments.
panic
Yeah.
at the last minute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's our audience.
Right, that concludes presentation portion of the evening. We are a second opportunity for interested citizens. I will roll through some subcommittee reports pretty quickly. Stacy wasn't able to make this week's meeting, so Kelly, do you have any updates from PMBC and or the Shaker Lane Building Committee? I know they had another tour this week.
Nothing from PMBC. I have been involved in a meeting, a couple of meetings, just talking about capital items, et cetera, with the FinCom representatives and select board representatives, and they've been very helpful in terms of trying to create a unified approach to taking care of capital needs in our districts. Very productive. So other than that, I haven't dipped my toe in the water in terms of what these capital projects are. Shaker Lane Building Committee, we did have another meeting Tuesday night. Week seems to blend at times. And we had around 30 people come out for the tour. And we've, you know, at that meeting, we voted on the project design submission. And it was unanimous that we submitted the Upperfield High School or Shaker Lane build. That document, I think I was talking to you as I was trying to finish reading it. It was over 500 pages that was submitted to NSBA. These sessions have been really valuable, trying to get an idea of how we build a story in terms of demonstrating the needs for reimagining Shaker Lane School for our youngest learners. It's been extremely helpful, and it's giving us some good guidance as we continue to tell our story. And it's like writing a book. I mean, you start with kind of an overview, and then you focus on some areas, and now as I mentioned that evening, is we need to now connect everything we're talking about to student learning, student safety, and student wellness. Everything needs to be connected to that pathway. So that's what we're starting to work on. Dave Cartoonen, first time I've used his full name for a while. I'll be in touch with him. We're not quite ready for him yet, because we went right up to the end of the feasibility study with our first video. And, you know, the second phase of the project is just starting. We had to submit that document, but there's a lot of work ahead. So I'll be getting a hold of him. I also had somebody reach out to me from Guilford, and I'll be meeting with the gentleman in a couple of weeks and getting some advice from this particular individual who has some experience in promoting school projects in communities. So thank you for the reference, Justin. It's going to help. I mean, the more people we talk to that have been through these projects before, the more information that we're going to have to strategize and make sure we're bringing the community with us, which is so imperative with any project like this. So we're on the right track, but you know, certainly a change in our focus is central office administrators and Schcmte, equate it to adding another half-time job at times. It's exciting, but sometimes exhausting. And it's all good. I mean, it's just those timelines are so compressed and we can't miss them. So that puts additional pressure on us. Any of you, I mean, you're always welcome to give us advice, and you do. I mean, we'd love to see you at our gatherings, so to speak. And as you know, as a school committee, you're key in helping get that information out there so the public can make a good decision. And I'm phrasing it that way deliberately because we cannot promote the project. We have to give information and there's a fine line because you cannot be seen as trying to get people to vote the way you want them to. And then you have a little more wiggle room than I do. I have a strict path I have to take as a superintendent. If I veer off it, I can't veer off. So,
And when is the next walkthrough public information?
I don't think we have do we have a date yet?
Another walkthrough, no, there's a meeting
No.
scheduled December 18th, I believe, and that was
Yes.
virtual.
Yeah,
There's no scheduled walkthrough at this time, but I think they were incredibly beneficial, and once word got out, it tripled our attendance.
Right.
So I mean, everyone on the
we are gonna, we will plan another one, but I think our focus right now is trying to find ways to connect with people that we're not connecting with. For example, families in our community that do not have children in school yet, they have no children at home. So we have a strategy for that. Justin and I were talking just the other day, and I mentioned that it'd be nice for us to team together as a school committee and superintendent, get some solid talking points together, which we're going to start to do, making those interconnections I just talked about. And then we'll try to assign or have people who are available to go to the school council meeting and a PTA meeting in each school, so we can sit down and have a conversation and have a nice pamphlet and PowerPoint presentation that we can give them that we already have. But those conversations are so important because we all know that getting a hold of people, having a conversation, a two-way open conversation will help us spread the word. They're going to talk to other people about it. And as administration, we're super excited about this possibility because we can see how it's going to enhance learning opportunities for our students. But we live it every day, and we have to figure out how to tell that story to bring people along with us and try to leave a lot of our jargon out of it because our acronyms are plentiful.
Yeah, I was there Tuesday night and the conversation seemed to get stuck on nice to have and need to have. So I think that could be an important part of messaging going forward.
And what could I are there plans to talk to the Council on Aging and to talk
Yes.
to the business community and to talk to
Yeah,
other different communities?
you're a big piece of that.
Yes.
Well, we're all gonna have to
Take
yeah.
part.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, and I say that
Happy to
because I
do
know
that.
you're willing to do that. I think your point about, when's the next tour is a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
We offered 2 tours, we got about probably maybe 50 people to come between the 2 tours. I think the strategy now is let's go to where people are, like PTA meetings and school advisory councils, and build a little more
Okay.
momentum, and then we can have more tours, and then let's try to hit a different subgroup and
Yeah.
see who we get enough interest from, and then invite them in.
Yeah.
And we've connected with the council on aging. So
I think certainly
And
as,
you had said, Kelly was saying that families that people who live in town and don't have kids in school right now. And
Right.
you said that was a group that you want to make sure we cover, and that's why I brought up Council on Aging.
sure,
Yeah, small business, there's a small business association, and I'm sure there are other groups.
Well, there are, I presented to Rotary a while ago now.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You could,
that was a great run, dry run.
Yeah.
To say the least, because I mean, you have a variety of different people there, different walks of life, and it was really interesting to hear some of their questions, great questions, some support, but there's always trepidation about tax increases. You know, that's one of the things we're cognizant of, and we need to continue to work on figuring that out with our town government, because there are many different ways to look at this in terms of how we unfold a funding plan.
Did we have the details on the December 18th virtual meeting? I can put that in the newsletter. Is it gonna be on the Shaker Lane website? People can find
It's
out.
on the, Schcmte School Board. No, it's on the town website. It's on the town website, posted on the town website.
And we're gonna
I'll
start,
send it to you anyway.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
that'd be,
send you calendar invites, just,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I just, so if someone was going to go to that meeting, how would they access it?
we'll send it out on school status as well. And they would like to go back to virtual meetings for a while. I understand. I mean, a lot of the town boards are virtual. They have never gone back to in person. So we're respecting that, but at the same time, we needed some time at Shaker Lane School, and we're gonna need some time there again. So we're trying to,
And it would be an evening meeting?
pardon?
The December 18th would be an
7 o'clock.
evening meeting?
Yes, it would, I think it's 7 o'clock, I believe.
you really just want to, maybe an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, part of those meetings, obviously the bills are coming in now. And there's a process that we have to use to approve payment for the bills for the invoices. But all in all, I'm very pleased where we are in the process, and I'm excited that there is talk around town. It's starting. That's what we really need.
Policy subcommittee, have anything to report tonight?
No, we'll be meeting. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's nothing new to report from the policies committee meeting. I'm not sure, I don't remember at the top of my head our next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, early December.
Right.
Yes.
I skipped over budget. Budget subcommittee, our next meeting scheduled for December 4th, 8:15, Kelly's office. But so we've made a lot of progress last meeting. Things are looking good. We'll just continue to take a deeper dive. Make sure we get well prepared for our presentation, formal presentation, which will take place in March. But we'll continue to debate things and discuss various budgetary needs over the course of the next couple of months. CPAC update.
Yeah, I have one. So the CPAC interim leadership team has been continuing to work to support families in our community. There was a Federation for Children with Special Needs meeting. They provided a basic rights workshop, which was very well attended. And the next meeting is a parent meetup social event at Tavern in the Square on December 10th at 7 o'clock. So parents can come and connect with other parents, discuss how the year's been going for students so far. And the CPAC interim leadership team looks forward to connecting with other parents there. And we extend our thanks to the CPAC interim leadership team. Hopefully they'll be holding election soon. That they work in close collaboration with Lynn Snow, the Director of Student Services, to coordinate all of these efforts on behalf of families with students with special needs. And we're very grateful to them.
Great. I've been asked to be at the parent meetup on December 10th, so I'll be
Yeah.
there.
Good.
All right, any other subcommittee reports or business before the school committee? That,
Can I just provide one quick update?
Of course you
And then
can.
contact with the board, just so that we have it here, and then I will follow up via email tomorrow too, but either through the update preference link or in the text email link that originally went out about the app, the primary contact went at other contacts,
okay,
either via the email or the link, or the app, excuse me. So we'll follow up, because I'm sure other people have that question too, but the primary contact is able to have.
And you'll have separate emails for your own primary contact for school committee.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks. It's good to know.
All right, there's nothing else before us this evening. Looks like we do have a need for an executive session, which is just to approve and release some minutes, some executive session minutes from prior meetings. So there's a motion in the. Janine, you want to make the motion as it's read?
I move to open the executive meeting. Is that what we're asking to, or close?
Move into executive
Yeah,
session.
you see it right there. 8 o'clock.
Yes, I move to, move into executive session for the purpose of approving and releasing executive session minutes with no intention to return to open session.
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have adjourned